So, hello and welcome everyone to our weekly session titled Latest in Bitcoin Tech, where we go through the weekly Bitcoin Optech newsletter. And this week we will be covering newsletter number 319, published on 9th of August at 2024. And this is one of the longest or the largest newsletters I've seen recently. We'll start with the news section as always. I'll just go through the preface of the newsletter. This week's newsletter announces the dark skippy fast seed exfiltration attack, summarizes discussion about block withholding attacks and proposed solutions, shares statistics about compact block reconstruction, describes a replacement cycling attack against transactions with pay to anchor outputs, mentions a new BIP specifying threshold signing with Frost, and relays an announcement of an improvement to ftrace that allows it to opportunistically verify zero knowledge proofs using two proposed soft forks. So we have five news articles this week. The first is about the fastest seed exfiltration attack. Most of you who are active on social media must have heard about this. A lot of people were talking about this. It is dubbed as Dark Skippy on the internet. And the second news article talks about a block withholding attack. This has to do with mining. The third news article is statistics on compact block reconstruction. This has to do more with the P2P network. And the fourth news article is about the replacement cycle attack against pay to anchor. This is connected to the Lightning network as well, and also has to do with a new form of a standard output that Bitcoin Core has now introduced. And then we have the proposed BIP for scriptless threshold signatures. And then the final article is optimistic verification of zero knowledge proofs using cat, mat, and elf trace. And then we have Bitcoin Core PR Review Club, which generally is a monthly show up. So what we'll do right now or for today is that we will slightly change the sequence of the news articles. We will go to the second last, the penultimate news article, because we have Sivaram with us, who has proposed this BIP for Frost, which is a multi-signature, which is a threshold uh, multi-signature algorithm, basically. So we'll first ask Sivaram to go ahead and walk us through or talk us through his proposed BIP, and then we can move on to the rest of the newsletter. So yeah, Sivaram, over to you.
Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Shivaram. I'm a Spiral grantee working on Frost related projects in LipSecP. I recently shared a BIP for Frost signing on the mailing list. So I'll try to talk about what Frost generally tries to address, like what problem does it try to solve, and talk about existing standardization efforts for this scheme. I think going through my BIP right now might not help much because it's too technical and it won't give like an overview, I guess. Is that fine, Pfizer?
Yeah, we can do that. You want me to open the BIP?
Okay, no. I don't want you to open the web. I'm just
All
saying
right.
that instead of explaining my web, I'll try to give like an overall picture for Frost and the other
Yeah.
available webs in the space and like
Right. Due to time constraints, I think that is more suitable. That we just give an overview, and people who are curious can go and read the bib themselves and probably get in touch with you if they need any help or assistance. But for this session, let's try and keep it as succinct as possible.
yeah, sure. Please let me know if it exceeds the time. I don't think I have that much material. Okay, anyways. So what schemes like Frost and Music too, right? They are multi-party protocols, meaning there are lot of signers involved. We don't have just one signer. Okay. One more thing that I want to say is in case we have any question, feel free to stop me in between and ask the question. I may not see the chat, so if someone posts, Faisal, please let me know.
Sure.
And yeah, I'll keep it short. Okay, the multi-party protocols. So they basically mean a lot of signers are involved in the protocol, and they schemes like Frost and Music too. They try to solve this problem of shared custody. Like, how do we allow more than one person to hold a Bitcoin. So let's back up a bit and see what do we mean by a person sending Bitcoin. Let's say Alice wants to send Bitcoin to Bob, single user. What she usually does is she'll create a transaction that locks her Bitcoin to Bob's public key. And this is called a lock script, and it'll usually be in the transaction output. And Bob, when he issues a digital signature using his private key, he'll be able to spend the Bitcoins which Alice sent him. So when we say Alice send Bitcoin, we are talking about this lock script which Alice creates that locks her Bitcoins with the Bob. So how we traditionally do this shared custody in Bitcoin is we have this script called P2MS, pay to multisig. So when we have a lot of people rather than a single person like Bob, what Alice usually does is she'll list all the public keys of the participants. Let's say we have a 3 or 5 group, and she'll put in like the 5 public keys in the lock script. And whenever 3 of those 5 people issue a signature, they'll be able to spend the Bitcoin. This is how it is. This is how this shared custody problem is tackled in the ECDSA world in Bitcoin. So when after this Schnorr signatures were introduced, we have this new protocols like Frost and Music, which allows us to tackle this shared custody problem in a more elegant way. So the idea here is instead of tying up 5 public keys to the Bitcoin, we'll just have like a single common public key to the Bitcoin, and we'll split this public key into 5 people off chain. Like we don't really want everyone's public key on the blockchain. So we'll just leave the splitting and aggregating mechanism to the group, and we'll say like you guys come up with a common key, and we'll just Alice will send her Bitcoin only to the common key. And this advantage is since we are using only one key, it'll occupy less space in the block, so naturally fees will be less. And there is also additional privacy benefits because now when a person looking at the blockchain, they won't know that the transaction belongs to a group. They'll just see, okay, this just goes to a single public key. So Alice is talking with only one person, not 5. And this Frost and Music protocol, they differ in the way that how do we split this keys among the signers. So this is where the Frost and Music differs. What Music does is Music uses a technique called additive secret sharing to split this a common key among the 5 signers, and Frost uses something called Shami secret sharing. So now that we sort of talked about how this shared custody problem is addressed, let's talk about the standardization efforts. Like, what are the specifications out there that tries to explain these schemes in such a way that developers could implement it in their code base? So for Frost, we have this RFC called RFC 9591. It's written by the author who wrote the scheme, and that tries to standardize the Frost scheme for various combinations of uh, curves and hash functions. It also includes SegP plus SHA-256, but the reason we can't use that specification is because of the BIP 340 signatures that were introduced in Bitcoin. So this RFC serializes the pub key as a 33-byte pub keys, but in the BIP 340 we serialize them as 32-byte pub keys. So this RFC is not exactly compatible with the Schnorr signatures defined in Bitcoin. So we needed a new BIP to be able to describe the scheme. So that's where my BIP comes in. So for music, we have BIP 327 that describes the protocol, and the BIP that I wrote describes signing for Frost. There's another BIP called DKG, BIP DKG, that is written by Jonas Snake and Tim Ruffing. What that BIP tries to do is it'll say how to generate the keys for Frost. And once the keys are generated, you'll use this BIP Frost signing to sign and create the digital signatures for those five participants. Um, One natural question that people might say is like, why do we have two bips for the Frost in the first place? Music has only one bip, bip 327, but why are we introducing two different bips? Why can't we just have like a single bip that explains everything for Frost? The reason is because of their differences in the key generation mechanism. Like I initially mentioned that Frost uses something called Shamir secret sharing, whereas music uses something called additive secret sharing to split the common keys. It turns out that additive secret sharing is simpler, where we just take all the pub keys of the signers who want to do this group sharing and add it together. But whereas in Frost, this Shamir secret sharing requires some sort of correlation between these individual signing keys. We also call them as sign shares. And because of this correlation, signers need to talk with each other when they are trying to create this frost keys. So doing this, so for talking, you need communication channels, and these channels were not specified in the Frost papers, which increased the complexity of this key generation mechanism for Frost. So we couldn't fit it into a single BIP like we did in BIP 327. So that's the reason we have two BIPs, and maybe another notable difference that people might phase is we use something called Frost 3 in the BIP Frost signing. Um, what happened is once Frost came out, there has been a number of works, follow up variants of the schemes that came out in the later years, which tries to optimize the signing. So, like, because of that, we had this Frost scheme, which is the original. Then another thing came called Frost 2, which is a variant of the original scheme proposed by the same author, which optimizes scalar multiplication in the signature. So the variant that we're using in the Bitcoin is called Frost 3. It was introduced by Tim Ruffing in his roast paper. So when people look at Frost paper and go to this BIP directly, they might be confused about it. So this is like the general overview of Frost and the standardization efforts um, in the space. And the BIP is currently in it's a draft, so we are looking for feedback from the community. There is a GitHub repository for the BIP. If you could look at it, review, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me in Discord or Twitter or mail, whatever. And you could also open issues on the repo if you find any mistakes in the BIP. And yeah, that's all I had to talk about the BIP and Frost. If you have any questions, you could ask me.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, firstly, Sivaram, for walking us through your BIP. I had a couple of questions. My first question was that you explained that one of the primary differences between music and Frost is the key generation mechanism, right? And would it also be correct to say that there is another difference between music and Frost, where Frost is an optimization over music, is that music is n of n? there is no concept of thresholds in music, whereas Frost is M of N or T of N, where even if you have a subset of signers available, you can sign and spend the transaction. Would it be correct to say that?
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention that. That's like one of the major points. When we split this keys among five people, um, in music scheme, you need all five of them to issue a signature. But in Frost, we just need a threshold number of people to issue a signature. So you can think of Frost as this generalization of signing, and music is like a specific part where you need all the signers. But in Frost, you can just have any subset of signers to create the signature.
Right. Great. Thanks. And one more question that I had is that you mentioned, from what I understood, is that there was already a mechanism to create a public key for Frost, but that public key was 33 bytes. All right, the previous mechanism that existed, or the previous proposal that existed, would lead to a public key, a shared public key of 33 bytes, which is not compatible with Taproot transactions. For Taproot transactions, we need a 32 byte public key, and that is the reason why you had to come up with this BIP to make Frost compatible with Bitcoin. Like, the previous mechanism was not compatible with Taproot transactions, and the BIP that you have proposed now makes Frost compatible with Taproot transactions. Would it be correct to say that?
Um, yes, but that's a slight correction. It we don't need to think of it like a previous mechanism, because that RFC that I was talking about, which serializes as a 33 byte, that's used everywhere. Let's say Zcash or other projects that need Frost, they're going to look at that RFC. When we introduced the issue that the 33 byte and 32 byte issue that I'm talking about is, like I mentioned, different variants for Frost. There are also different variants for Schnorr signatures. So when we introduced this Schnorr signatures, we had this variant where we were using 32 bytes for public keys. So since this protocols like Frost and Music and adapter signatures or patch verification or whatever, half aggregation, everything is built on Schnorr signatures. And in Bitcoin, since we are using this specific BIP 340 variants, we need these protocols to account for this um, differences. It's not like a completely different variance. The issue is like it's a small modification which will be required in protocols like Frost Music. Will be like, should we negate the secret key or not while signing? We just need to take care of that particular scenario. But yeah, the reason we need a new BIP for Bitcoin is because it uses a different Schnorr signature variant. But the other um, places where they're using Schnorr signature that serializes PubKeys 33 byte, they don't need to worry about anything, and they can just use the existing RFC. To be honest, like Bitcoin uses this a different 32 byte. It's not a common practice to use it, but people, I think they've made a choice because it saved Bitcoin's like the space on the block.
Right. Great. Thanks a lot. No more questions from my side. Anything in the chat? Anybody else has any questions for Sivaram? All right. Yeah. No more questions, Sivaram. Thanks a lot for coming over and explaining this BIP to us. We will now proceed towards the rest of the newsletter. If you have any commitments, please feel free to excuse yourself. And if you want to stay back, then we're more than happy to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I have
You're
to
most
go,
welcome.
so we'll see you guys later.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
if you guys have any other questions like that, you guys are reading about Frost later on, you feel free to approach me on the Discord. Be happy to help.
Sure.
Bye.
We do that. Thanks a lot. All right. Okay. So we have, who was that? Okay. Saurav. Okay. We have, yeah, somebody wants to talk. No one?
So I'm specifically interested in dark skippy part, so if we can take that up next.
There is nothing specific about it. We can like take it, but if anybody is interested in understanding exactly the math behind it or exactly the cryptography behind it, then we will not be able to cover it in this session. And most probably it's not even that elaborately mentioned, because people who have detected this mechanism of seed exfiltration will not go around telling people how exactly the seeds are exfiltrated, because that might be exploited. So generally these things, they just mention that, hey, this attack is possible, your seeds can be exfiltrated, and then they'll dish out the precautions that you need to take, that take precaution A, precaution B, precaution C to mitigate this. But in most cases the developers will not reveal the intricate details of how exactly it's possible to pull off this attack, lest it becomes a common practice. But yeah, nevertheless, we'll go through it. All right, just give me a second. Yeah, someone wants to talk?
No,
No.
I'm saying that's okay.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, we'll read through it. It is not very long. Foster seed exfiltration attack. Lloyd Fournier, Nick Farrow, and Robin Linus announced Dark Skippy, an improved method for key exfiltration from a Bitcoin signing device, which they previously responsibly disclosed approximately 15 hardware signing device vendors. See, so this is disclosed to hardware signing devices, all right? So to people like you and me, generally, if there's a bug, there's a vulnerability, there's an exploit, we will not be informed about the intricate details of how exactly this exploitation can be pulled off. It's disclosed with the hardware signing device manufacturer so that they can be on the lookout for it. So it was disclosed to approximately 15 different hardware signing device vendors. Key exfiltration occurs when transaction signing code deliberately creates its signatures in such a way that they leak information about the underlying key materials, such as a private key or a BIP32 HD wallet seed. Once an attacker obtains a user's seed, they can steal any of the user's funds at any time, including funds spent in the transaction that results in exfiltration if the attacker acts quickly. So this is basically an seed exfiltration attack. Okay, now, there are some things that are peculiar to this attack, which we can deduce already from the text that we have read. Firstly, is that there are exfiltration attacks that leak your private key. Okay, can anybody tell me of an attack which is like a lot of people know it? How is it possible for someone to leak their private key? Like one what do you say, if somebody is complacent, right, then they can leak their private key. And most people who've done mastering Bitcoin, it doesn't cover it directly, but we generally come up with this a mechanism of compromising a private key. There's something that we shouldn't do, and if we do it, our private key will get compromised, and it's very common. Most people know it. Anyone?
Is it non-serious?
Any?
I think phishing.
Yes. No, I think what I was fishing is also one of them. But yeah, what I was intending with the question is non-serious. So yeah, great answer, Shan. Non-serious. So there are two unknowns. Like most of us who have done programming Bitcoin, that book in detail covers how you create digital signatures. So you use a private key, and then there's another random number that you select, which is a nonce. Okay, so if you reuse that nonce, okay, if you reuse the same nonce for two different transactions, your private key can be figured out, right? So that is why you should never reuse your nonce. So if you have the same private key for two different transactions and the same nonces, your private key can be compromised. There's a very nice article. Let me see. Reuse nonce. I will post it in the general section later. It is by a Bitcoin core dev. This one. I think I don't remember her full name, Ishana Sharma or Khanna. Or, I don't know. But yeah, this is a very nice and a very easy to understand article. If any of you have gone through programming Bitcoin, or even gone through an article that explains how you create digital signatures, right? You have a generator point, you have a private key, and you get a public key by performing scalar multiplication between the private key and the generator point. Then you have a nonce. Okay, and this is how you find the capital R, and the x coordinate of that R is your one component of a signature. Then Z is your message. Then this is how you find S, all right? So this is like very, very simple and very easily explained how if you reuse a nonce, your private key can be figured out. So that's one way. I'll later on share this article. Okay. Yeah, that is one way of leaking your private key. But what happens in this example is that you leak your private key. So only the transactions or the UTXOs that are associated with that specific private key will get compromised. Okay, so if you are using a BIP32 hierarchical deterministic wallet, right? We've studied this in Mastering Bitcoin, that it can generate millions and millions of keys, right? It has a master seed. From that master seed, it generates a private key and a public key, and then from that private and public key, it can generate millions and millions of pairs of child private keys and child public keys, so on and so forth. Okay, so if one specific private key gets compromised, only UTXOs associated with that private key can be stolen. But what this exfiltration attack Darkskippy does is that it has the potential to compromise your seed, 12 words or 32 words. So if your seed is compromised, if a hacker knows the 12 words or the hacker knows the 24 words, then the hacker has access to every single private key that your wallet controls and every single public key, obviously, that your wallet controls. So this is what makes this attack even more dangerous, because if you reuse the nonce and somebody gets access to your private key, there are millions of private keys that your wallet might be controlling, and they get access to only funds associated with that private key. But this exfiltration attack has the potential of compromising your entire wallet seed, from which you generate the parent private key and public key. And once you have control to the seed, you have control to all the private keys associated with that wallet. This is one thing that is peculiar to this attack. The author mentions that the best previous key exfiltration attack, of which they are aware, require dozens of signatures to exfiltrate a BIP32 seed. With Darkskippy, they are now able to exfiltrate a seed in two signatures, which may both belong to a single transaction with two inputs, meaning all of a user's funds may be vulnerable from the moment they first try to spend any of their money. Okay, so we know brute force. Most of us know what a brute forcing is, right? So if you want to guess something, if you want to guess somebody's password, right, you have to brute force it. Like you try lots and lots and lots and lots of guesses till you eventually find what the right guess is. And the same goes for hashing. When you're hashing a Bitcoin block, right, you keep on hashing, you try a lot of permutations and combinations till you eventually find the number that you're looking for. So this is not the first BIP32 seed exfiltration attack. There are other attacks as well, other than this, preceding this, where it's possible to compromise somebody's BIP32 seed. Okay, but those attacks are more complicated in a manner that, like, if you have access to somebody's device, that person has to sign multiple signatures. Okay, so if you have access to somebody's hardware wallet, you're a hacker, you have access to somebody's hardware wallet, you've injected a malicious software in somebody's hardware wallet, you cannot compromise their seed until and unless they make multiple digital signatures. When they make multiple dozens and dozens of digital signatures, that is when you have an adequate data set using which you can compromise their BIP32 seed. But what's specific about Darkskippy is that with one single transaction, the hacker can get access to your BIP32 seed. All right, so you don't need dozens of signatures. You don't have to wait till the device that you have infected with the malicious firmware, the user of that device makes dozens and dozens of signatures, and then you have an adequate data set using which you can infer their BIP32 seed. This is an attack in which you need two signatures. Okay, and that those two signatures could be one transaction itself, right? It could be an RBF. So you make a digital signature, you broadcast a transaction, and then you make another digital signature and you replace that transaction. So one single RBF transaction is sufficient. It gives adequate data set to the hacker to compromise the victim's BIP32 seed. So two things that we've learned about this attack up till now is what is peculiar about it, not unique but peculiar about it, is that it does not just have the potential of compromising your private key, it has the potential of compromising your entire wallet seed, that is your 12 or your 24 alphabets, which means that all the private keys associated with your wallet can get compromised. And the second thing we learned about it is that unlike the preceding exfiltration attacks, which required dozens of signatures for the hackers to have adequate data to infer the BIP32 seed, Darkskippy is an attack where even with two signatures, and both the signatures could be one single transaction, as we discussed, an RBF transaction, the hacker needs only two signatures to compromise your BIP32 seed. Key exfiltration can be used by any logic that creates signatures, including software wallets. However, it's generally expected that a software wallet with malicious code will simply transmit its seed to the attacker over the internet. Exfiltration is mainly considered to be a risk for hardware signing devices that don't have access to the internet, direct access to the internet. A device that has had its logic corrupted through either its firmware or hardware logic can now quickly exfiltrate a seed even if the device is never connected to a computer. The third important thing that we learn about Darkskippy is that this attack can be pulled off even on an air-gapped device. So up till now, we've heard that air-gapped devices are very safe, because if you're not using an air-gapped device, if you're connecting your computer to your hardware device to the internet while signing your transactions, there is a possible that there is a malicious software that you are connected to, that the software that you're running in on your computer is connected to the internet, and you've probably clicked on a malicious firmware. So you should always use an air-gapped wallet. Now, Darkskippy is an exfiltration attack which also affects the hardware wallets that are not connected directly to the internet. Methods of performing exfiltration resistant signing for Bitcoin have been discussed, including in Optech newsletter as far back as 87, and are currently implemented in two hardware signing devices that we are aware of. See newsletter number 136. Okay, so you can go to newsletter number 87. Here they've mentioned some best practices to mitigate exfiltration attacks, and also you can go and read newsletter 136, where they have mentioned two signing devices specifically that, as per their knowledge, are already performing checks to mitigate such attacks. And these two hardware wallets are Coldcard and Bitbox. What these two do is that when you upgrade their firmware, they check for the public keys. They check that the software that you're upgrading has been signed from the authentic key of the software provider, that is the Coldcard software provider from their official website, or the Bitbox software provider from their official website. If it's a malicious firmware, if it's not an authentic firmware, if it's a phishing email, or somebody has somebody has altered the software over the internet, then your device will be notified that the software update that you are trying to execute is corrupted. In Coldcard, I believe there's a red light that emits. So if your Coldcard asks you to upgrade its firmware, and it is not an authentic firmware, it is not being signed by the public key corresponding to the private key of the authentic issuer, your Coldcard will emit a red light, and even the Bitbox notifies you. I don't know if other wallets do that or no, but these are the two, Bitbox and Coldcard, that notify the user if the firmware is malicious. That deployed method does require an extra round trip of communication with the hardware signing device compared to the standard single sig signing, although that may be less of a downside if users become accustomed to other types of signing, such as scriptless multi-signatures that also require additional round trips of communication. Alternative methods of exfiltration resistant signing that offer different trade-offs are also known, although none has been implemented in Bitcoin hardware signing devices to our knowledge. So how these devices mitigate this attack is they perform an additional round of checking while performing digital signatures to mitigate this signing. Okay, now this might be a burden. However, we just talked about Music and Frost. In Music and Frost, it's common that the people who are signing the transaction have to interact with each other, and there are multiple rounds of communication between each other. So once Music and Frost go mainstream, then it is normal for hardware devices to have multiple rounds of communication with each other, which is currently not the norm. So this is one way of how these devices mitigate these attacks. There is an additional round of communication between the hardware devices or the multiple signers, which are performed to ensure that your digital signature is not leaking out your wallet seed. Okay, and one thing that also I'd like to mention is that your seed phrase is leaked on the blockchain. Okay, so there are two types of attack. One attack is when the attacker gets confidential access to your private key or your BIP32 HD seed. With dark skippy, there are, I mean, the attacker can do both things. If the attacker wants, then the attacker can gain confidential access to your private key or to your seed. And if the attacker wants, the attacker can leak your 12 words or your 24 words on the blockchain. They'll be embedded in your digital signature, so they'll be available to the entire blockchain. Optech recommends that anyone using hardware signing devices to protect substantial amounts of money guard against corrupted hardware or firmware, either through the use of exfiltration resistant signing or through the use of multiple independent devices. So what is the recommendation? The first recommendation is that you should use multiple hardware wallets. Okay, so you use multi-sig, what we call it. You use two wallets or use three wallets. So even if one wallet is compromised, two wallets are still immune. Or if two wallets are compromised, the third wallet is still immune. And as long as even a single wallet is immune to this attack, then the hacker will not get access to your seed. So if you have a lot of funds or your life savings stored in any account, then it's better to always have that account as a multi-signature account. This is one way of mitigating. Second way of mitigating is that you should always buy your hardware wallets from authentic sellers, like the sellers themselves. Try avoiding buying them from Amazon. Try avoiding buying them from resellers. Okay, go to the official website of the wallet provider and buy it from them directly. Don't buy it from resellers. That is the best thing to do. Third thing, whenever you are upgrading the firmware, go to the authentic website of the firmware provider. Verify the digital signature, authenticate the firmware, and only then upgrade it. These are some of the measures that you can take. One more thing that I'd like to mention about dark CP is that it is pretty difficult to pull off, because for this attack to come to life, both your hardware device and your software wallet both have to be compromised. If only your hardware wallet is compromised, this attack can't be pulled off, and if only your software is compromised, it can't be pulled off. Okay, so if you're using a signing device, you have to eventually connect it to a software, right? Whether it's what do you call Sparrow or whatever it is. You have a cold card that is connected to a Sparrow, so your hardware device and your software device both have to be infected with this malicious firmware, which makes it a little more difficult to pull off. So these are some steps that you can take. Okay, use multi-signature as much as possible. Buy from the authentic suppliers. Don't buy from aggregators or dealers or resellers or Amazon. Always check the public key. Verify the public key, the digital verify the digital signatures of the firmware that you are updating. These are some of the measures that you can take, and yeah, that is pretty much all that I had to share. You can go, there's a website, I believe, dedicated to it. You can read more on it. They've made a website for it. So if you want to go into more detail, you can go through it. FAQs, they have everything. Although they don't go into the math of it, but still, if you're curious to know more about it, attack advantages, how can it be performed, what are the measures against this, there's a demo where they have shown how within two signatures you can compromise. So they infected this device and its software, and with two signatures, with one single transaction, they leaked the 12 word or the 24 word seed phrase. So that's what we have to share about dark skippy. It's a seed exfiltration attack that can compromise your BIP32 HD wallet seed, and it can also happen when your device is air gapped, and it compromises all the private keys associated with your wallet. And for it to happen, your software and your hardware both need to be corrupted. Yeah, that's pretty much all that we have to cover about dark skippy. Any questions, any thoughts, anything to share, please go ahead and do so. Anything in the chat? There is something in the chat. That was great. Okay, not for me. Anything to share? Anything to ask about dark skippy?
No, very well detailed. Thanks, Fazil.
All right, you're welcome. Cool. Let's go to the next one. Today we have some interesting topics. So if you all don't get bored, we can take it till 9:15. So the next one, I believe, is block withholding attack. Anybody knows what's a block withholding attack? Ever heard of it? block withholding attack. All right. Yeah.
No, I don't know. I was saying no.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's read through it first. Anthony Towns posted to the Bitcoin dev mailing list to discuss the block withholding attack, a related invalid shares attack, and potential solutions to both attacks, including disabling client work selection in Stratum V2 and Oblivious shares. Pool miners are paid for submitting units of work called shares, each of which is a candidate block that contains a certain amount of proof of work. The expectation is that a known portion of those shares will also contain enough proof of work to make their candidate block eligible for inclusion on the most proof of work blockchain. For example, if the share proof of work is 1 to the thousandth of the valid block proof of work target, the pool expects to pay for 100,000 shares for every valid block it produces on average. A classic block withholding attack occurs when a pool miner does not submit the 1 in 100,000 shares that produces a valid block, but does submit the other 999 shares that are not valid blocks. This allows the miner to be paid for 99.9% of their work, but prevents the pool from earning any income from that miner. Right. So first let's understand a few terms. So there are two things. The first thing is the network difficulty, and the second thing is the pool difficulty. We all know what the network difficulty is, right? The network difficulty is the amount of work that you have to do to produce a valid block. That is what the network difficulty is. We've all studied it in Mastering Bitcoin, I think last week itself, what network difficulty is, and you can go and check it on the internet what Bitcoin's current network difficulty is. It'll show you what the current network difficulty is. We all know that. So if you have hashed, if you found a nonce which is greater than the network difficulty, then you have fulfilled the proof of work for the blockchain, and you have successfully mined the block. Okay. Now if you're working with a mining pool and the mining pool pays you only when you find a block, it will be very difficult for solo miners to start mining with the block. The mining pools have two kinds of difficulty. One is the network difficulty, which is the difficulty of the entire blockchain. If you create a hash which is greater than the network difficulty, then you have successfully mined a block. And the entire blockchain and the entire Bitcoin network will recognize and acknowledge that you have created a hash that has exceeded the network difficulty, and now you have successfully mined a block. There is one thing known as a pool difficulty. Okay. Pool difficulty is when the pool pays you. So if you create a hash which is above the pool difficulty, that is known as one share. Okay, most of you must have heard of this word shares, right? So the pools pay you based on the amount of shares that you produce. The pool stipulates a difficulty. Let's say the difficulty for the entire Bitcoin network is 1000x. So if you create a hash which is of a difficulty of 1000x or above, you'll mine a block. But if you're mining with the pool will have its own local difficulty, which is known as the pool difficulty. Let's say that is X. So the network difficulty is 1000x, but the pool difficulty is X. What is this pool difficulty? The pool tells you that, hey, if you find a hash that is above 1000x, we mine a block. That's great. But even if you find a hash which is above X, we will pay you. Every time you find a hash above X, that is one share, and we will pay you whatever amount for one share, 1 sat per one share, 2 sats per one share. Okay. So if you keep on hashing, okay, there is a very little possibility that you'll ever find a hash. If you're a solo miner, if you have an ASIC in your house, it might be that you're mining for 10 years, but you'll never find a single hash that reaches that 1000x difficulty that you mine a block. Okay. But very frequently you will find hashes that are above the pool difficulty, that are above X. So the pool will compensate you every time you find a block, every time you find a hash which is above the pool's difficulty. All right. So what is this block withholding attack? This block withholding attack is an attack which is executed by a miner. It is executed by a remote miner that is mining with a pool. Okay, so I am a remote miner. I have an ASIC in my house. I have collaborated with mining pool XYZ. Okay, I'm a bad player. I'm a bad actor. I'm an adversary. I'm collaborating with that pool, but I want to harm that pool. Okay, I want to harm that pool. What will I do? Okay, I know if I create a hash which is above X, which is above the pool difficulty, the pool will pay me. And it can be between X to 999X. The moment it goes above 1000X, I mine a block. When I mine a block, the pool gets the block. But I don't want the pool to get a block. I will only share hashes with the pool which are above X but below 1000X. So every time I create a share which is above X but below 1000X, the pool is liable to pay me. But every time I create a hash above 1000X, I will withhold it. I will not share it with the pool because I want to harm the pool. Because if I create a hash above 1000X and I share it with the pool will broadcast it. And when the pool broadcasts it, everybody will know that the pool has mined a block and the pool will get paid. I want to get paid, but I don't want the pool to get paid. I want to harm the pool. I want to work with this pool. I want to get paid, but I don't want the pool to get paid. So whenever I create a block which is within the which is within the pool difficulty, above the pool difficulty but below the network difficulty, that is between X to 999X in our example, I will share it with the pool so that the pool is liable to pay me. But every time I generate a hash which is above 1000X, which makes the pool liable to the Coinbase reward, I will not share it with the pool. I will withhold it. This is the block withholding attack. Okay, so I hope what is a block withholding attack is clear. If anybody does not understand what's a block withholding attack, please let me know. So I'll go over it again.
Just one question, Faisal. When you say it's above difficulty, you mean it's below the target value, right? In technical terms, that every miner needs to produce a block hash which is below the target value.
Right. So there are two target values. One target value is the network target value, which is to mine a block. The second target value is the pool's local target value, which the pool sets and says that, hey, if you get above this target value, you'll not mine a block, but still, because you're working with us, we'll pay you. Okay.
Right.
So there are two target values. So when I'm doing a block withholding attack, every time I find a share which is above the pool's target value, but below the network target value, I will share it with the pool. So the pool is liable to pay me. But the moment I find a share which is above the network's target value, if I share that, the pool will get the Coinbase reward. Okay. I don't want that to happen. I want the pool to keep on paying me, but I don't want the pool to ever get the Coinbase reward. I want to harm the pool. So every time I get a share above the pool target, I will share it with the I'll broadcast it, but every time I get a hash which is above the network target, I will not broadcast it.
Right.
Faisal, how does this pool's difficulty? Like I'm a miner. I just mine till I reach the pool difficulty. I get an answer I get a hash which is less than the pool's difficulty. How does this contribute to the pool's overall effort to mine a block?
From what I understood, can you repeat your question? Just the final half of your question.
Yeah, like me contributing, me hashing a value which is less than the pool's less than the pool's target, but higher than the actual block's target. So I'm finding a hash in between the two. So how does my contribution eventually lead for the whole pool to go about and find a block?
If the hash that you produce is above the pool's difficulty target and below the network difficulty target, how does it benefit the pool? That's what your question is, right? Because the pool is not mining a block in that case. So
Yeah,
why is the
right.
pool paying you?
Yeah,
Because
right.
if the pool only pays you if you mine a block, you will never get paid. So like there has to be some compensation, right?
Yeah. Is it the case that like they keep track of the hash that I provide and they sort of do some sort of an elimination kind of thing? I don't know. I've just started to go into Stratum
Right.
V1, but I was not
Right.
very.
So pools who pay you out an FPPS is a mechanism in which the pool gives you a fixed pay. Okay, it's like you're an employee. Okay, the pool operator is the boss, you're an employee. So if you're working in a company and you're an employee, whether the company makes profits or the company makes losses, the company is liable to pay you, right? At the end of the month, you will get your salary whether the company makes profits or the company makes losses. That's FPPS. So there are majority of the mining pools, overwhelming, almost all mining pools today work on FPPS. Okay, so whether the pool finds a block or whether the pool does not find a block, they will pay you. Okay, so you're an employee. So they pay you based on shares. Okay, so every time you generate a hash which is above the pool's difficulty level but below the network difficulty level, that's one share. So after an X amount of time, they have a time window when they pay you. In that time window, they will see how many shares you generated, how many hashes did you generate which were above the pool's difficulty level but below the network difficulty level, and how much are you liable. If you are liable to get paid 1 sat per share, then they'll calculate how many shares have you generated in the past X amount of time, whatever the time window is, and they'll pay you. Some people pay you daily, some people pay you weekly, whatever it is. It's like that. Okay, with a mining pool like Ocean, where they pay you if they find a block, it's called tides. Okay, so you don't have a fixed payment. If they find 10 blocks in a very short succession, your payment goes up 10 times. If they don't find a block in 10 days, you don't get paid anything at all. I don't have access to it right now. If I would have had access, I would have shown it with you. To you, it's in my phone actually right now. But yeah, before going, if we find time, I'll probably open my WhatsApp, stop screen sharing, and after the session I'll open my WhatsApp, and for a couple of minutes I can show my Ocean dashboard to people who are interested and who want to stay back. But yeah, basically that's how it works. They keep a track of how many shares you generated. Every time you generate a share which is above the pool difficulty, below the network difficulty, that's one share. So they'll keep a track of how many shares you've generated. Okay, so Ocean will keep track of a certain window, and when they find a block, they will see that okay, we found a block at this time. In the previous window, preceding window, how many shares has this person generated, how many hashes has this person generated which is above our pool's difficulty level but below the difficulty level of the network. If they say he generated a million shares, let's say, okay, and for one share he's liable to get 1 sat, so he deserves 1 million sats. So our different pools calculate differently. They have different windows. They have different payout mechanisms. So that is how your what is the value of your share. Okay, it does not contribute directly to you mining a block, but at the end of the day, if the pool says, "Hey, if you mine a block, we'll pay you," you probably never get paid. Okay, so every time you make an effort, because that is an effort, you're doing at least some work, right? If you're generating a hash which is below X, then it makes absolutely no sense, right? If you're using a node miner, if you're using a bitax, generally they will generate a hash which is even below X, which is even below the pool difficulty level, and they're never going to mine a block with that, so they're never going to get paid with that. But if you're using like an ASIC which is at least 90 terahashes, then very often most of the hashes that it generates will be above the pool difficulty level, so they'll pay you for your effort. That is the purpose of keeping a track of these hashes which are above the network, which are above the pool difficulty level but below the network difficulty level. And if you hear this word share, if you're going to dig deep into mining, you'll hear this word everywhere: shares. Miners get paid in accordance to the shares they generate. One share is a hash that is above the pool difficulty level but below the network difficulty level, and the number of shares that you generate in a given time window is how much you get compensated in accordance with as a remote miner working with a mining pool. That's
What
okay.
is
Yeah.
what is the do you know what the current pool difficulty is generally? Network
It
difficulty is
varies from pool to pool. It varies from pool to pool. With Ocean, I'll tell you what it is. I think it's 16384. Like you shared in the morning, your node miners difficulty was 54, right?
yeah, the best
Yeah.
difficulty count was 54. So 16384. Okay, that's fair. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And
I think
also,
in just
Faisal,
a
don't
second, I
share
have the
your
message.
yeah,
Give
don't
me a
share
second. I
your
have the
dashboard.
message.
Don't share your dashboard because this is recorded. Yeah.
No, later on. I said later on, after everything is done, after I stop sharing my screen, if you people want to hang up and somebody wants to see it personally, then I can show it, but not on, I won't stream it on Twitter. I'll tell you what Ocean's difficulty is. It is 16384. Okay, yeah. And this keeps on varying. It varies in accordance with the network difficulty. When the network difficulty goes up, the pool difficulty also goes up. When the network difficulty comes down, the pool difficulty also comes down, and the difficulty varies from pool to pool, from one pool to the other pool. So yeah, now we know what a block withholding attack is. So the question is how to mitigate this attack. Okay. Uh, One solution Towns proposes is for pools to provide multiple block templates, allowing each miner to choose their preferred template. This is similar to the existing system used by Ocean Pool. Shares submitted based on pool created templates can be validated quickly and with a minimum amount of bandwidth. This prevents the invalid shares attack that pays 100% but does not help with the approximately 99.9% of profitable withholding. So there is another attack. Okay, this is called as 99.9% attack. The attack that I discussed right now. Okay, so 99.9% of the shares that you are going to produce are going to be above X but below 1000x. Okay, so you will share those 99.9% shares but withhold that one share which can mine the block. There's another attack which is 100% invalid, like 100% attack. What do you do in that? You just start mining an invalid block. Okay, you create an invalid block and you start mining an invalid block. Okay, so all your hashes are invalid intentionally. Okay, so what you're doing is you are generating difficulty which is above X but below 1000x, and even if it's above 1000x, it will be an invalid block. So the pool will have to pay you for the shares that you generate, but the pool will never get paid. One way to mitigate this is what Ocean is doing. Ocean is currently the only mining pool, Bitcoin mining pool in the world that gives its users the option to choose templates. All the other mining pools create their own templates. They don't share what template they are creating with the miners. So if you are mining with any other pool, you have no idea what transactions you are hashing on. You have no idea what block you're mining on. You have no idea what transactions are included in that block. You are just blindly renting them your hashes, and that is why a lot of people say that if you're working with a pool that pays you an FPPS, you're not even a miner, you're a hasher. So if you're mining with any other pool, you can't even be called a miner, because a miner is somebody who takes decisions, right? As a miner, you have the right to choose, you have the right to know what transactions you're mining. But other pools, when you're mining with them, they will not tell you what transactions look like. Okay, they might even accept some outer band transactions. You have no idea. After the block is mined, when they broadcast it and everybody gets to know, that's when you get to know, okay, this is the block that I was working on. Beforehand, they will not share what transactions they are included. They'll not even share what the block looks like. It's only Ocean that shows you. We can go, this is not specific to me, and we can see Ocean's 4 templates. It'll be a fun experiment kind of a thing. Merchandise, Ocean mining pool. Okay, so if you're mining with Ocean, you have choices to choose any 4 block templates. Other pools don't give you that choice. Other pools just have one block template and they'll not even share it with you. They'll choose it. You have no idea. Okay, but with Ocean, you can have 4 templates. They show you what those 4 templates exactly are. Each and every transaction that is in the block template, they will show you. Okay, they'll even show you which people are mining with you, what hash rate those people are providing, each and every person's address. Okay, so if you mine a block, other pools will not tell you that you've mined the block, but here you can go to your address. Okay, if you're an Ocean miner, your address will be listed here, so you can click on your address, and if you mine a block, you'll get to know that you mined that block. It's not that you're going to pay extra. Okay, so the person who solved the block, this is his address, so you can recognize that you're the one who mined the last block of Ocean. Okay, so where can I find it? Pool stats. I think it'll be in the dashboard. I won't take too much of your time. If I can find it in the next few seconds, okay, else we'll skip it in. Pool stats should be in pool stats. My stats. Okay, no worries. I'll share a link later on where you can click on that link, and even if you're not an Ocean miner, I'm not able to find it here. I think it should be here. Okay, got it. Next block. Okay, so this is the block. Okay, so there are 4 templates that you can choose from: Ocean default, core plus anti-spam, core, data free. Okay, and if you're mining, if you've chosen any of those blocks, then you can see exactly what block you're working on. This is the block that you're working on. If you've chosen that their default template, they share with you exactly what transaction, each and every transaction you can go and look. So as a miner, you know what you're mining on. If you're not okay with that block, if you're not okay with any transaction they've included, you can opt out and start mining with any other pool. So this was just correlated with it, so I thought of sharing it. because they mentioned the example of ocean. Okay, so one way of mitigating this attack is to ask the users to choose one of the 4 templates. Okay, to ensure that there are no invalid transactions. This is one of the ways. The second way is requires pool miners to use a private template from the pool. Okay, which means that it is the pool miners that will create a template and they will share it with us. Okay, now why is this block withholding attack an issue? It is an issue especially in context with stratum v2. In 5 minutes we'll wind up. In context with stratum v2, because in stratum v2 every miner will have the prerogative to create their own blocks. It doesn't happen in stratum v1, right? Other than ocean, if you're working with any other pool in stratum v1, they won't allow you to create your own block. They will create the block and you have to mine it. But with stratum v2, the miners will have the prerogative to create their own blocks, no matter what mining pool you're working with. If that mining pool is accommodating stratum v2, you can create your own block and mine with them. What if you create an invalid block? Okay, you create an invalid block and you're hashing with them, they'll have to pay you, right? They'll have to pay you as long as you are generating a valid share. So one way to mitigate it is to do something like ocean, that even on stratum v2, it is the mining pool that creates 5 templates or 10 templates and asks you to choose from one of those templates to ensure that you do not create an invalid template. The other way to mitigate that would be to allow the pools to create their own templates privately and not share it with the miners. But then this takes us back to stratum v1, which doesn't make any sense. Okay. So Towns concludes by describing 2 of the motivations for fixing the block withholding attack. It affects small pools more than large pools, and it costs almost nothing to attack pools that allow anonymous miners. Okay. So the most potent fix that Anthony Towns proposes here is known as Oblivious shares. Let me see if yeah, Oblivious shares. What are Oblivious shares? Okay. The miner will not know the difficulty of the share that it has created. Okay. If the miner knows that I have created a share above X and below 1000X, the miner will share it. And if the miner gets to know that I have created a share above 1000X, the miner will withhold it. Oblivious shares is a mechanism where the miner will not get to know the difficulty of the share that it has created. So the miner has no idea whether the share is below X. The miner has no idea whether the share is above X. The miner has no idea whether the share is below, above 1000X. So the miner cannot hide some and show some. This is one mitigation. Okay. So this is what the news article talks about. It talks about block withholding attacks. What are block withholding attacks? It's an attack which is performed by a remote miner that is working in collaboration with a mining pool, but they want to harm the mining pool. So they will broadcast the shares which are above the difficulty level of the mining pool, but below the difficulty level of the network to get paid from the mining pool. But every time they generate a hash which is above the network difficulty, which will make the block eligible for a Coinbase reward, they will not share it with the pool to harm the pool. So the pool has to pay them, they don't have to pay the pool. And one mitigation for it is Oblivious shares. Couple we discussed. One is like creating multiple templates. Second is creating a template and not sharing it with the miners. And the third and the most the best one would be Oblivious shares. That is, you allow the miners to choose the candidate block on their own. However, you don't allow the miners to see the difficulty of the shares that they're creating, so they cannot hide some as per their convenience and share them as per their convenience. This is what the block withholding attack is, and these are what some proposed solutions are by Anthony Towns in context with Stratum v2. I think this is all we'll be able to cover. We covered the frostbip, we covered the darkskeeper attack, we covered the block withholding attack. There was a PR review as well, which was very interesting. We'll not be able to cover it. And there was this another compact block reconstruction, which was also very interesting. And this one was also very interesting. So this week's news article was very interesting. Whoever is curious should go and read it on its own. But due to time constraints, we will not be able to do it. I'll stop sharing my screen. If any questions pertaining block withholding attack, please go ahead and ask them. No questions in specific pertaining the block withholding attacks, I'm assuming.